Welcome to the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. Now here's part one of a conversation about Delmarva's rare plants between naturalist Dave Wilson and botanist Wes Knapp.
Today we begin the first of a two-part series on rare and native plants of Delmarva. We'll talk about these plants and the state of biological diversity on the peninsula. In the studio, we are lucky to have Wes Knapp, the Eastern Region ecologist and botanist with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Wildlife and Heritage Division. He has worked for DNR for about 15 years and is currently the Eastern Region Heritage Ecologist. He has described a number of new species of plants around the U.S. So, Wes, in your work in the field, certainly you have done tremendous amount of research with rare plants. Can you tell us about some of the rare plants we have here on the shore?
Sure, Dave. Here on the Eastern Shore, we have quite literally hundreds of rare plant species. And most of these species are southern species at their northern limit of geographic distribution. So they're southern. They reach their terminus up here on the Delmarva. And most people don't understand the diversity of rare plant species we get. So if you think of orchids, we have rare orchids. Think of trilliums, we have rare trilliums. We have rare grasses. You name the group, we probably have a representative rare species in that group here. Some of them are incredibly disjunct, which means they're not found for hundreds of miles, and then all of a sudden you find them here on the Delmarva. Some of them are continuous up the coastal plain in the southeast, and then we just happen to get the last few here on the shore. In terms of spring things, we're all wanting spring. We have a couple beautiful things we find in the state only here on the Eastern Shore. We have the dwarf trillium, Trillium pusillum, variety virginianum. If you're on the shore and you see a small trillium, that's a rarity, and something I'd be very interested to know where you are, because I'm sure there are populations of this yet to be discovered on the shore. We also have the beautiful Adamasco lily, which jumps from southeastern Virginia, large showy lily of woodlands, white flowers. We have a sole location on the shore for that.
Wes, I'm curious as to what kind of habitats you find most of these species in.
There is no just one habitat to look for rare plants, but most people are shocked to find out that the majority of our rare plants are pyrophytic or fire-loving. So if I want to find a rare plant species, I will look at power line right-of-ways. I will look at recent clear-cuts or timber harvest operations, because most of the species require light, and with the lack of fire in our habitats, you have to have removal of the tree canopy. So there's a very high correlation of roadsides and power lines with rare species here on the Eastern Shore.
What are some of the biggest threats to our rare plants?
Woody plant succession is a major threat, where forest regeneration comes out, removes all the habitat for a rare species. So lack of fire or forest regeneration is a major one. Invasive species is a major one. But lastly, habitat destruction. I have seen in my short career beautiful places destroyed. And you'd think we live in a time that wouldn't happen anymore, but it does. And I remember old-time botanists, when I first came out, telling me about great places they'd seen and what used to be there that are gone. And now I tell young botanists those same stories. And at some point, this has to stop. We have to stop destroying great natural areas, but it still happens.
So what kind of protection do rare plants have in Maryland?
We get some protections with wetland habitats here on the shore. But even the biggest buffer is only a 100-foot wetland buffer. So if you have a rare species in an upland habitat that's going to be logged for timber harvest, that could certainly impact a species, especially if it's a high-quality natural area that's going to be cut down and then replaced with loblolly pine, which is native but not indigenous to many of the areas it's then planted. So I'm not sure if we want to advertise this, but the truth is rare plants get zero protection in the state of Maryland. Only if that plant is found within a wetland, it can get protected, or within the buffer of a wetland, it can be protected. But this is a major misnomer I see all the time in my work, because I have to review development projects or timber harvest proposals, where say you have this rare species here, and someone thinks they can't do anything. Well, I have to tell them, you actually own this rare plant. Even if it's state listed as endangered, even if it's federally listed as endangered, the landowner owns the species and can do with what he wants. He can destroy it if he wants to, spray it with Roundup if he wanted to. So that's how we still lose things. There is no protection for rare plant species.
How much do we know about the biological history of plants in Maryland?
I've been working on the checklist of the Maryland flora for the last 8 years, and I am fascinated at the historical literature. So Reveal, who's the old curator at the University of Maryland, did a great series of papers where they actually went to London. They went to the British Museum and the Oxford Museum. They looked at the old specimens like from the colonial era. And this is like the rare, threatened, and endangered plant list. There are so many things. They just happenstancely collected that are now significantly rare, extirpated, or disjunct a great distance. And there are numerous collections of these plants. So that tells you that Maryland was a very different place in the colonial era than what we see today.
We've been talking to Wes Knapp, the Eastern Region ecologist and botanist with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Wildlife and Heritage Program. For more information on plants on Delmarva and related links, visit us at delmarvaalmanac.com/nature.
Thanks, Dave. We'll bring you part 2 of his conversation with Wes Knapp within the next few weeks. Well, that's all for this edition of the Delmarva Almanac. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and next week join us to learn more about our local culture and get connected to our natural wonders. If you'd like to become an underwriter for this program, visit delmarvaalmanac.com/support. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, and underwriters EatDrinkBuyArt.com for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.